We are pleased this morning to have Representative Tom Leek with us, and Chris Tolland of Foundation Risk Partners, the Executive Vice President there, will introduce our guest this morning.
Thank you, Cheryl, and it is my pleasure this morning to introduce my friend and colleague, Representative Tom Leek of District 25. Representative Leek's district consists of coastal Volusia County, including the world's most famous beach. Representative Leek is a homegrown product raised in Ormond Beach. He's a proud graduate of Seabreeze High School, later the University of Central Florida, and then the Stetson University College of Law. Prior to beginning law school, Representative Leek served as a legislative aide in the Florida House of Representatives. After law school, Representative Leek returned home to begin a 20-plus year law career where he was president and managing partner of his firm. Representative Leek is now Chief Legal Officer and Executive Vice President for Foundation Risk Partners Corp., a national independent insurance brokerage firm headquartered in Daytona Beach, Florida. Representative Leek has been named as one of Florida's legal elite by Florida Trend magazine, as alluded to by Senator Tom Wright in the previous presentation. Currently in the legislature, Representative Leek is chairman of the Pandemics and Public Emergencies Committee, as well as chairman of the redistricting committee. Tom is actually the only representative in the Florida House chairing two full committees. In his previous term, Representative Leek served as chairman of the Public Integrity and Ethics Committee, and in 2019, he was appointed to the Public Service Commission nominating committee by the Speaker of the House. Also, at the request of the Speaker of the House, he serves on the House leadership team. In 2020, in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis, which I know Representative Leek will be talking about today, he was actually asked by Governor DeSantis to serve on the Reopen Florida Task Force to develop a plan for the reopening of the state following the onset of the pandemic. For his legislative service, Representative Leek has been awarded the 2017 and 2019 Distinguished Advocate Award from the Florida Chamber of Commerce, the Champion for Business Award from Associated Industries of Florida, and was also named as the 2018 Legislator of the Year by Florida Associated Builders and Contractors. In addition to his professional accomplishments, Representative Leek has served as chair or president of numerous civic organizations, including the Daytona Regional Chamber of Commerce. Representative Leek is an avid fisherman, boater, and college football fan. However, his most valued activity is spending time with his wife, Michelle, and their two daughters, Alex and Sarah. Representative Leek, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. We'll have to get you the abbreviated version of that. I appreciate it, though.
Well, good morning. We are happy to have you with us and spending time, and it's always fun to have the hometown guy in front of us, and so we can pepper him with questions and find out what he's doing up there. We have quite a crew for you this morning, but we've already started with questions, and one of the first ones affects one of our big industries here, which is tourism. So hoping you can help us out on this one. We're talking about a Senate Bill 2008, but I'm sure you're aware of it. It would expand the use of tourism development and convention development taxes. So from a tourism standpoint, this is via Georgia Turner, and I'll let her respond as well, but they're opposed to anything using tourism taxes for anything other than tourism marketing. And also, this bill would require referendums to renew authorization to levy the tourism taxes every 5 years. Says it's moving on your side. So
yes,
can you respond?
House Bill 1429.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, and let me just start with part of what my role is these days, and because of my position in leadership, I run very few bills anymore. I have two out there now, and I don't see things until they come to my committee. I am generally aware of this bill. I have heard about it, and my understanding the author's intent is to provide septic to sewer, to figure out ways to get more money to help people get from septic to sewer. Beyond that, I haven't seen it yet. It hasn't come before any of my committees, so I haven't studied it. I really can't speak on it. I apologize.
No worries. Well, we've got a few things that we know that you know a lot about. We are very proud of your service and the and I'm going to get it wrong, the pandemic committee is what I'm going to call it. But can you tell us a little bit about COVID liability and how that's moving along?
Yeah, that's, the House made that a priority. We have already actually moved it off the floor and sent it over to the Senate. We're waiting on the Senate to return it to us, but essentially what we said, and there are two versions of it, right? There's one for business, for those folks who voluntarily go into a business for services, and for medical service providers, those folks who are in long-term care facilities or go into hospitals, which is a little bit different standard of care than just somebody who volunteers to go into a business. We've passed what we call HB 7, which would provide an increased burden for plaintiffs to prove a case against a business for COVID-related injuries only, and provide that business some protection. So some assurances that if they've reopened, responsibly, that they don't have to worry about the fear of getting sued for doing so. That's passed the House. It's over in the Senate now. I wouldn't be surprised if the Senate doesn't tack on the liability protections for medical service providers and send them both back over to us, and we will get that to the governor just as quickly as we can to sign off. You'll note that it has a retroactivity clause, meaning that it'll reach back to the start of COVID-19.
That's, I know from a chamber perspective and certainly business perspective and the industry I work in, that's a very important piece of legislation. We're anxious to see that go through.
I'll tell you, there was a fear that these lawsuits were coming, and there are several dozen lawsuits right now, and a lot of the opponents of the bill have said, it's not a problem yet. Why would we do this if it's not a problem? Well, I can tell you, I know of at least one major plaintiff's law firm going around the state and training lawyers on how to bring COVID cases, and so they're coming. And without this, I fear what we would see in our court system and for our businesses.
What else is the pandemic committee in charge of? It's a new one, so hopefully we never have to deal with it again.
That's a good question. So it's pandemics and public emergencies. Public emergencies used to be a subcommittee, but with the pandemics and with the idea that we need to start planning more holistically for all public emergencies, we elevated this to a full committee. And so while we're focused on pandemics now, really the entire focus of the committee throughout its life will be on public emergencies, whether that's hurricane, chemical spills, sea level rise, whatever the public emergency may be. And I expect that the future of this committee will really be on planning for those types of threats. Pandemics is where we are focused right now. And, we are looking at a number of different things. We looked at COVID liability protections for one. We're looking at, and this is what I've asked our folks to do, is go back and in each of the silos that we have, whether it's education or healthcare, ask those practitioners, what do you know today that you wish you would have known before, so that it would have better helped you to mitigate any harm or successfully navigate the emergency. And so that's what we're looking at. So we're going through each one of those silos. One of them that's gotten a lot of attention is essentially deregulation. We have relaxed or removed regulations for the better part of a year on many businesses and in many different facets. And so the question always for me with government is if it's worked without it for this long, why do we need to go back? And so we're reviewing those as well. I expect we'll put out maybe more than one this year committee bill addressing some of these issues. One of the hurdles that we have is that we're not done yet. So it's hard to look back and say this is precisely what we need to do for going forward on planning for the next pandemic or the next public emergency when we're not to the end of it yet. But there are some things we can see. So there, particularly if you look at some of the emergency orders and you look at, they've expired, right? They've expired because the threat or the need for that particular emergency order is no longer necessary. So those are kind of the low-hanging fruit we can fix this year. I expect that the pandemic committee will have another active year next year, and we're going to have to turn our focus to public emergencies. I'll tell you, Florida. And it's interesting, and I was saying this before we went live here, I know that we are getting calls from other states in a couple of areas asking for our help in how to deal with the particular issue, whether it's, one of them is elections, one of them is public emergencies and vaccine distribution and the like. And it's nice to see Florida being, held up as the example of how to do it right. The reason for that is we have the benefit of, a hard-earned experience. Florida has seen more public emergencies, mostly through hurricanes, than most other states in the country. And the result is we've had the infrastructure in place to take care of it. And a lot of what we did for hurricanes, translated to what we can do for pandemics. Not completely, but partially. And so it's nice to see Florida being held up as the example of a state that's doing it right.
Most definitely. We don't always get that.
No.
Well, another committee that you're working on is the reapportionment committee. And we understand that that's, been held up a little bit with the census results. So just wondered if there's an update on that you could provide.
Yeah, I can. But let me give you my disclaimer up front. I don't really talk about redistricting because redistricting is such a contentious issue that the lawsuits are sure to follow. I can talk to you a little bit about the process. And the way it would normally work is we would get what I'll just call the raw data by the end of last year of the raw data, the numbers of the census moves within the state. We didn't get that. So then it was promised to us in March, and this comes out of the feds, right? So then it was promised to us in March. We didn't get that. Now it's promised to us in July. We hope to get that raw data. But even once you get that raw data, there's another step, and that step is you have to go to the precinct level data, which we don't anticipate until September, right? You can't redistrict until you have the precinct level data. With the raw data, we can tell, if we're going to pick up or lose any congressional districts. It appears by the news reports out there that we're going to pick up, probably 2 congressional districts. I'll tell you something else that's interesting. For the first time in statehood, California is likely to lose a congressional district. New York is likely to lose at least a district, and from that you can kind of see, from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, you can kind of see where the population is shifting, and they're coming south, right? They're coming to Florida, they're coming to Tennessee, they're coming to Texas, Arizona as well. So you can kind of see where that population shift is happening. The result for us on redistricting is we'll be able to get started to do some of the preliminary work as we kind of move forward here now, but it's really just preliminary work. And it's basically us, guessing on what we think the numbers will be. And then you'll see, once we get to the precinct level data, then we can start in earnest to redistrict the state. It's, I'll tell you, as intimidating as being the chair of the pandemics committee is, redistricting is pretty significant too. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm a little anxious about it as well.
Certainly, you can't make everybody happy on either one, I'm sure.
Well, I'm good at that. So.
Well, another subject that's come up before the chamber, it's certainly a priority of ours, and you've heard of it, I'm sure, is the opportunity to tax online sales taxes in a more fair way, and wondered if you had any background on that as well.
I do. We call it the Wayfair bill because that's the name of the lawsuit that actually the Supreme Court said that you could, as a state, actually go out and get that money and require that tax. Because prior to that, the Supreme Court had basically said states had no real authority to go and collect that tax. And Florida will join, I think, this year, one of the, I think we might be one of 2 who doesn't go and collect that tax. Now, the tax itself is a pre-existing tax, so it has been around. This is really an enforcement mechanism that we just haven't been levying on. But the tax has already been owed, so it's just a matter of collecting it. I think that will pass this year. What makes it palatable to me and kind of exciting is one of the issues in pandemic that we've seen is with the unemployment. You would have seen people, every employer pays a price per employee for unemployment, typically around $7 a head. Well, what we saw with the kind of forced unemployment that we've had during this pandemic and the brief shutdown we had, but then just the loss of jobs, was that number was expected to rise per employee from $7 all the way up to about 80, I think it's $89 per employee. And that's a significant tax on small businesses. And so what we've decided to do is this revenue that is kind of found revenue, because we're now going to collect what was owed, we will take to offset that, to try to hold that number at $7 per employee to help people get back on their feet. So it is a it is a revenue stream that has been there for as long as the taxes have been there. It is just one that has not been collected for whatever reason. And so now with collecting it, we'll be able to take that and offset some of the impact on businesses.
Well, sounds like a great project. I hope it makes its way through. Another bill, HB 1133, Coastal Conservation Preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Are you you're working on that? That's another one that's
yeah. Yeah, that's one of mine, and one of the two of mine that I have. And the idea behind that is, you've got situations, particularly in Volusia County, where you have a very expansive beach. And the goal here is to protect public access to the beach, while also protecting the private property rights of the individuals who live along the beach. There are some instances in the state where the private property actually, if you went and built a seawall, would eliminate public access. We wouldn't do that. And here in Volusia County, we don't really have to worry about it because our beach is so expansive. And so we're trying to find the right landing point on that. But, you have situations where homeowners have lost, had 100 foot of yard, 40 feet of it has gone into the ocean because of storms. Now the homeowner's still paying tax on that whole 100 foot, but they're not allowed to protect the erosion of their yard leading up to the structure because DEP won't let them build a seawall. And so what we're trying to do is find a good landing spot there. And DEP takes the position that they need to have absolute discretion on whether to allow a seawall or not. And one of the things we fight is, DEP has said on a couple of occasions that a structure may not be vulnerable until the erosion is 0 feet from the structure. They can't tell you. And so what we're trying to do is help everybody have a little more definition and expectation on when a seawall permit will be issued. And we're still working on that. That one's got a long way to go, but I'm working with DEP on it now to see if we can get that to land in the right spot. Sometimes in this position, I was talking to some of the Turtle folks the other day, and their position was that you're undermining our efforts. We've been working on this for a long time, and now you're going to come in. And I said, how long have you been working on it? And they said, well, for 10 years we've been working on this. I said, well, 10 years is too long. At some point you got to land the plane. So sometimes some of these bills help people move, get into gear and start to move, and hopefully this one will have that effect.
Is it so difficult because our state is so different, and the beaches are so different around in different areas?
Part. Yeah, in part, we're also using, we look back at a 15-year storm study, and if you look at, from the past 15 years, the number of storms that we've had come through the state of Florida compared to the 15 years prior to that, significantly more in the last 15 years. So much so that the DEP has already declared Volusia County beaches and many others as being critically eroded in their own studies. We need the county to play a role in this too, but we've got to do a little more work to make sure we're protecting our beaches out there and protecting access to our beaches.
Okay. I'm looking, I don't see another question at the moment, but what I did want to ask is, just from your outlook, what's your outlook of our area as far as other areas in the state, as far as our economic and financial situation compared to others that you're seeing from listening to your colleagues and what's going on in Tallahassee?
Yeah, it's funny, as I've gone around and I've talked to a lot of businesses and a lot of associations like realtors and other associations, and everybody throughout 2020 was very cautious, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. But if you got them one-on-one, they would tell you, really, we had our best year last year. And it's amazing to me the number of people who are telling me that. Obviously, set aside tourism. Tourism is in its own category over there. But if you go to the small businesses and even some of the larger businesses, they talk about how surprisingly good the year of 2020 was. I think that bodes very, very well for our local economy. And, you know, I talk to, you know, my friends who are realtors, and, you know, the realtor market is just, I think it's insane right now. I'm happy for it because I bought before this. So I think it's just insane right now, but it is really, really strong. I'm very, very happy to see the overall unemployment numbers in the state of Florida, you know, fall to, what is it now? Somebody help me here. I think it was 4.3%, but below the national average for sure. And that tells you that we made the right decisions along the way in reopening Florida, and we provided a path forward for people to reopen responsibly. And you know, it's basic, you know, economics. You got to have money moving, right? As long as money is moving, then the economy can be strong. And we provided that path forward for money to move through our economy, and I think we're going to be better off because of it.
Well, one of the other big issues that we're struggling with a little bit locally as well is affordable housing. And are you aware or working on anything regarding affordable housing, or could you give us an update on what's going on there?
You know, I haven't heard much about affordable housing. You know, that's going to be a budgetary issue, and then obviously, you know, the state budgetary issue is much different than what you're seeing in local communities and how individual businesses are moving because the state is so reliant on tourism. You know, I think if you look at, I would look at, you know, basically a 5-year history of the Sadowski Fund to see where that was. And there's, you know, discussion that Sadowski was never really intended to get as large as it has gotten. And if we can you know, I would look at that 5-year average to see make sure you can maintain that for affordable housing. But this budgetary year is going to be, you know, certainly unlike any that I've experienced up here. And you're talking about, you know, fairly significant revenue shortfalls. You're going to see some federal money come in, which is, you know, hopefully a one-time thing. And you don't want to spend, you know, a one-time dollar on recurring problems or recurring expenses. So it's going to be a difficult, you know, budgeting year, and I think all areas of the budget, including Sadowski, will have to get scrutinized pretty closely.
Well, appreciate the update there. That's a interesting one for us, and as you know, we're also dealing with that a little bit locally and trying to figure out the best way to help folks out. I've got one last quick question for you. There is a bill, and I'm looking, Stephanie, if you want to speak up on this. There's a bill 889, a Senate bill that talks about property tax exemptions for nonprofits, and I didn't know if you had any insight on that one. Stephanie, you may want to speak up, and she's saying I don't have a microphone, so she's not going to speak up on this, but didn't know if you had some information about
That's cheating, Stephanie. I like that you threw her out there on the hot seat, though. I don't have any knowledge of that bill whatsoever. You said it's a Senate bill.
It is a Senate
remember
bill.
when you guys, I see a lot of stuff coming through. When you remember, if you don't have a House bill and you only have a Senate bill, and you're really upset about the Senate bill, it's not likely to go anywhere because there's no House companion. The bills have to kind of meet in the middle. It's not always true, and you can see something that's in the Senate or in the House roll out as a committee bill on the other side. So it's not always true, but it's usually true. That particular one, I don't know if there's a House side bill or not, but it hadn't come before any of my committee. I only sit on 3, 2 of which I chair. So pandemics, redistricting is not meeting right now, and then appropriations. So if they haven't made it to those places yet, then I haven't seen the bill.
Well, it certainly is great to have you on the committees you're on, and appropriations is obviously a big one for us, all of us. So thank you for everything you're doing for us. Any last parting words?
Well, thank you guys. I always love my chamber folks, and look forward to getting back home and seeing you again.
Same here.
Thank
well,
you.
Have a great day, and thanks again.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.